Changes happen faster than we expect, so on that note, let's take a look at 20 Gen 1 Pokemon that have changed the most since their Game Boy days. Everyone already knows the weight loss journey of Pikachu since the beginning of Pokemon. Heck, some people in fact remember the chubby Pikachu's design better than the current one. So the first one being a look at Pikachu when he used to visit Grandma every other day, compared to now having a better HP stat, should solidify the idea of the topic that this video is based on. When speaking about cute, adorable creatures, most of us would imagine that the last thing that would fit this description would be a 7-foot menace. That's surprisingly not your mom, but a big dragon named Dragonite instead. Yet when we go back to the past, Dragonite would seemingly start to be something that could match the used words. I mean, slimming down and most likely becoming hangry wouldn't make anyone happy, though looks like Dratini had a better time with a striped belly in the past. If you have seen Mew's Gen 1 sprite before, you were more than justified in thinking that Mew would make this list in time. Speaking of making it in time though, Mew doesn't look like it had plenty of time developing in the tube. Well, at least it rolls with the punches much better than any other last minute addition would be able to. Look, I know it's hard to talk about anything related to Vaporeon these days, but don't you dare touch the comment section for a bit and let me tell you something more interesting instead. Did you know that in terms of the biggest changes since Gen 1, Vaporeon actually has had quite a good amount of changes made to its design? Rocking some mohawk-like fins and standing up with an unusual aggressive manner, looks like Vaporeon got already prepared to rebel against injustice towards it. I don't know what Mr. Mime did to a specific Game Freak employee when it came to making Red and Blue, but after having a surprisingly good sprite for the first time in Pokemon Red and Green, someone had to do the back alley performer dirty with the most unsettling pixel rendition of Pennywise they could, and left it violated until the game's release in the US. It's not going to be the only instance of being the reason for the sprite's outcome, but clearly Moltres was going to have a rough time with trying to fit such a lengthy design into a 56x56 canvas. Well, at least we had a rubber chicken Pokemon for a gen or two, though I don't want to imagine how a modern version would look instead of Moltres' current depiction. When it comes to slander and constantly being called the worst out of the group, the Venusaur line has, unfortunately, known how it feels since day one. But even though the other two have had some noteworthy changes of their own, Venusaur now has another category in which it can claim to be number 1. Dude, kind of built like a spikeweed though. Now I know that the 56x56 restriction can be difficult to work with, but if you were able to make something like Blastoise or Gyarados look good even with such a small canvas, then there's no excuse for the Nidos to be built like substitute dolls. Well, Nidoking has it a bit better, but even with Gen 2 we can see these ideas be realized better, until 3D does them kind of dirty, but by that point it's been quite a journey already. Machamp pretty much has had its quirks showcased since day one. Machoke had some strokes in between, put on some mass, and grew a bit taller just like pretty much every other Pokemon. But Machamp on the other hand, haven't seen such a tone shift and glow up since Typhlosion getting his flames back. Already with Red, Blue and Yellow we started to see signs of how it ends up to be today, but even without all the color shifts it has in the middle generations, Machamp looks like a whole new Pokemon. The roots of Pokemon as a franchise being based on bug collecting can be seen pretty easily with the early iterations of designs like Butterfree. Compared to goofy guys like Wigglytuff and Golbat, this Butterfly looks like a digital cousin to the real thing. but when it comes to the modern day look, with each passing generation it just started to look and match more the look of Gen 1 Pokemon designs. Call it inexperience, restrictions, stylistic choice or what, but the way Primeape's fur looked back in the day made our pig monkey pal here look like its anger wasn't the only thing exploding. Well, there's no problem with that thought, but the execution makes it look like it's in the middle of the explosion process. With a more reserved nature and a defined design today, maybe they could go and give that design quirk a shot again with a new form or something? Jynx. Do I even need to say anything more? Everything and more has already been discussed to the end and back about the controversial look of the poorly lit coloring Jynx's skin has. But let's take a look at some other stuff that's changed. Now, I don't know if it's intentional or what, but starting with Diamond and Pearl, Jynx has had a random horn or something like spikes popping out of its sides. Due to the somewhat infamous nature of the 3D era, I thought these initially were glitched out details on the model's skirt, but turns out it was intended all along. The more you know. This in itself could be a whole separate topic and a video on its own, but the party icons, menu sprites, or whatever you want to call them have had quite the journey of their own. From a small batch of icons that were used for vaguely fitting Pokemon, to wholly dedicated, separate art pieces for each individual Pokemon could definitely count. But that's based on what you want to define as relevant for the topic. Probably it's just perspective or a pure showcase of boldness, but seeing a massive pair of balls showcased front and center will definitely be much more eye-catching than a pile of egg-looking seeds. Or seed-looking eggs, whatever. The point is, the way they looked then made them much more unique and magical. Exeggutor had the same deal by keeping the big boys now in the trees, but after going through multiple generations and losing a head along the way, the Cute and Gutor guys all in all have an interesting tale already, not even taking the Alolan form into consideration. Though it's more of a one-time thing, Cloyster's changes turned its world upside down. Well, more like sideways. All the details like the horn and the spikes on the sides were still there, but despite that the shell was staying to its roots from the days of being a shelter. But even though that's the most of the changes, I wonder what's the deal with the core looking pretty similar to Ghastly? Mostly defined by its big meaty claw, Kingler back in the day looked as symmetrical as possible. Whether this was a time-saving measure or not, the Krusty Krab with an intimidating attack stat we know today has come quite a way after growing some extra horns, or whatever you want to call them, along the way. Even if we didn't take into consideration and didn't make the video pretty much based on the sprites, Venomoth has already encountered plenty of changes to its design, with the like of it initially having yellow spots on its wings and a blue body in its red-blue official art. Though when we take that out of the picture, since Pokemon Green, Venomoth has become more defined by gaining more details and reworks to the initial design, like the horns, eyes and the wrist getting changed up ever so slightly with the games up until 3D. Instead of just Uno, we got those birds that still didn't have their stuff figured out yet. While Moltres had a good while of struggling with the size restrictions, Articuno, on the other hand, had a bit of an identity crisis in Generation 1. With red and blue, it was showcased to be much more hunched down and have a big triple feather tail. But right after with yellow, it switches to a much more recognizable, yet beardier version of what we know. Some years of fixing its back problems and finding a fitting style later, Articuno looks way better than ever. Snorlax's main trait of being a gluttonous, lousy sleeper is much more well known than its typing at this point, which may also seem to be an easy, uninspired, one-and-done deal type of design. So what's so special about it that puts it on the list? Well, after multiple generations of effort and plenty of struggle-filled years, as a slideshow, with each generation we could see Snorlax slowly getting more closer to standing up, until with 3D, Snorlax finally achieved its goal. What an inspirational story. How could I not close this off with yet another iconic Gen 1 Pokemon sprite that changed a surprisingly good amount across the years, which is also known as Golbat. Even though our firsty bat friend has a tongue pretty much the same size as its body, with each generation that gave it more space, Golbat either unhinged its jaw to be even wider, magically extended its wingspan, or both, until the 3D era, where with no doubt we can crown this beast as the Throat Goat, Blizzy Gladiator, or whatever other relevant title tickles your fancy. Make history by pressing subscribe and sending the red button to the past. Stay tuned for more.